Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Devashish. I hope you all are doing really good during this phase of quarantine. I'm really excited for today's webinar where I will be hosting Sahil Kamath. Sahil is currently the co founder of MassU.ai, a company based out of the Silicon Valley. So, Sahil is going to tell us more about how this whole journey of being a student to currently being an entrepreneur happened. So, Sahil, to start off with, can you tell us more about yourself and the evolution your company has gone through in the last 3 years?
And first of all, thank you, Dave, like for hosting me. First of all, and I'm so happy to see the turnout. There's like 27 people already, so that's awesome. I'm really flattered that people actually want to know something about me. So let me give you a brief introduction and a brief history of how we started a company. So I'm Sahil Kamath. I was in PS from 2014 to 18. I did my majors in electronics. I studied in PS from 2014 to 18, and I think in 2016 end is when we started this company. Initially, we called it Visio AI. So Visio stands for vision in Latin. So that was the first thing I Googled, and that's literally what we named it. And this was actually, let me get a little bit before that. So my co-founders, Rahul, Akshay, and Murli. So how I met these people, right? So initially, Rahul and I, we know each other from 10th standard. So we studied in the same IIT coaching, and none of us got into IIT. And we came into PS. He was in PS. He was my, desk mate even there. And we also were roommates in hostel, in apartment. So that's how I know Rahul, and we had a good chemistry. We all the projects we did it together, and it was a normal student life. And then in around second year end is when I got into an internship with IISc Bangalore, and I worked with a couple of professors, and we were working on a project for Boeing. So for the Boeing aircraft, wherein we used deep learning to denoise some of the engine noises and understand, if there is a turn in the air, in the turbulence, how exactly could we detect that by denoising all the engine noise. It was a very, very good concept, and we were still working on that. And that's when we also met Akshay. Akshay is the third co-founder, and we were working on this project. There was nothing great in this, and I think we heard a news in the news about some guy getting killed due to sleeping and driving. And that's when we got onto WhatsApp, and we are like, dude, did you hear this news? What is this? Like, could we do something about this? It was a need of the time, and there was a lot of news about this. And that's when we WhatsApp each other. We're like, dude, we know computer vision, we know deep learning, we know exactly how to detect facial features. Why don't we make a small product which kind of detects the facial features and determines if he's sleepy or if he's tired or if he's yawning. So we did a simple prototype. This was not in the intention of starting any company. We just did a simple prototype. We wanted to show off to our professor, and we made a prototype. So this was a simple prototype. We detected the eye width, and then it was quite simple. But then what happened is the next day we met up in college, and we decided, you know what, I don't think we should show this to the professor. This was our side project anyway. Instead, why don't we make it into a product? So that's the idea we got, and we just went headfirst after that. So we made this into a small product, and we had a opportunity to either make it a paper, and that paper will be catching dust 2 years from now, or we had to get a patent. Patent has way more value, but it's a way more costly process. So we just pooled in all our money. It was around 80K or 1 lakh at that time, and we applied for a patent, and they accepted it. So that when they accepted the patent, that's when we were like, you know what, this has some precedence to it. We have some unique thing going on here, and let's make this into a company. So our initial product was this thing called driver drowsiness detection system, which was a small module which went onto the dashboard. It could detect everything happen in a Raspberry Pi kind of environment. And this is how we started the company, Visio AI. So we did not keep this as a product. This was one of the products. So we wanted to keep Visio, as the name suggests, all things vision. So we wanted to do processing of camera feeds, CCTV footage, etc. So Visio did that basically. We had projects, multiple projects in Delhi, Canada, and even in Bombay. wherein schools, this was another news thing. So there was a guy in Delhi who got sliced. A senior guy sliced a junior guy's throat. And then we were like, holy shit, we can go there. We literally contacted the same school and we are like, you know what, we already have CCTV footage. Why don't we detect things like these anomalies? So we started detecting anomalies. And they were on board from like day one because it was a need for them. They were on the news. So this is what I'm trying to say is you see an opportunity like this, you can take advantages and disadvantages. You can be like, hey, shit, this is so bad, or you can go take action. So we just took action at that time. And this was a partnership firm. It was not a private limited. It was not a huge company. It was like a normal thing. And this went on for a year, 2017, fast forward. And that's when we started getting deals from Canada. So when we started doing this, now we had to convert it into a private limited, right? So because partnership firm is a local entity, it doesn't work that well. And there's no, in terms of liability and responsibility, it's not the greatest. So we started this thing called Krutrim Visio. Again, Krutrim stands for artificial, Visio stands for vision. So artificial vision is the private limited entity which we made. And here we started focusing on smart cities and video analytics. So that was our base product. We had around 18 to 20 models, which did all different kinds of things like helmet detection, parking violation. So we had a lot of models like this. And this was, I think we built all this from scratch. Back in 2017, the open source community was not as kind. And we had to build some things from scratch, some things we could, use off the bat and build more on top of that. And that's how all our models and our IP started to get created, right? So it was a very organic process of us trying really, really hard to solve problems. And the hardest part of problems is from the real world problems. The CCTV footage is so shit that you cannot detect anything. And we had to make our DL models work on that. So once we started making it work on that, it was really robust. So if you know anything about DL, the weight file can always be retrained and fine-tuned and made into a different thing, right? So that was our IP, and that we kept in our shelf. And every new client that came, we started giving a new service with the same amount of things. And then we toppled on to the fourth co-founder, who is Murli. So Murli is a ex ICICI Bank CIO. He's a pretty well-connected guy. He was in the Silicon Valley for 20 years. And he came to us as a customer and he asked us, hey, I want this problem solved. Do you have a solution for it? We had a solution for it off the top of the bat. And we also showed other things. You know what? We could also do this. And that kind of triggered Murli in a good way, because the next day he calls me up at literally 11 o'clock in the night and he's like, Sahil, can I join as co-founder? Right. So that's how it started. So, and, it was a big decision for us also to, take in another co-founder. But what we realized at that point in time is we are still 21-year-old people, right? Max 22, Akshay was 22. And we are like, what the hell? We want to grow really big and we want to get some sort of leadership, some sort of mature thinking into our company. And that's what we did. So we accepted Murli with all our heart, and then he turned out to be awesome. So he's very well connected, and he knows exactly how to focus, all the noise and get it into a proper thing. So that's what we did. So that was, I think, in 2018. So this was fast forward again 1 year, and here we started. Now we already had foreign clients by now, and problem is, being an Indian entity, some of the US people do not really believe in Indian entities as much as they should. It's very ironic because all their development is happening in India, but they don't believe in Indian companies as much. So we're like, okay, we'll bite, and then we made an entity in the valley. So because 90% of our customers were in LA, so we had to make a company there. So this is one point I would love to highlight, because you have to go where the customers are. You can't sit somewhere else and expect everything to work, because starting a company and customer success as a thing in whole it's a personal thing. It's you have to understand the psychology of the customer. You have to talk to them. You have to talk to them man to man. Get drinks with them. And then that's how it works. In LA, they have a really good work ethic where after the work hours, you're friends, no matter how higher up you are. So you can have beer with them and you can chill. So that's why we just thought, let's just move it to US. That should be our headquarters. Here, let's keep the R&D. Literally, we became every other cliche US company. And yeah, so that's how MarsView got rebranded, because MarsView is MARS, is Murli, Akshay, Rahul, and Sahil. Nobody knows this fact, by the way. This is a Easter egg. So MarsView is actually 4 founders, and that's how we started in the valley, and now we are here. So we then again the product changed, of course. So we could not cater to the government's needs, because government had like smart city initiatives. This thing started to get pulled like for like a year and a half. The payment was 8 months later, 10 months later after the production. We as a startup, we cannot sustain that. So we thought, what, let's not do B2G, we'll do B2B. And when I say G, I mean government. So we started catering to the business to business industry, and here there's a lot of potential here as well, because here there's no CCTV camera footage, but we had to slightly change our strategy to enterprise videos. Every company in this world uses videos for marketing. Every company in this world uses video for communication. That's become the new way of communication. If you think about it, from a decade, from 2010, digital marketing started becoming a thing slowly because of Facebook. And then now everything is in video. Tutorial is in video, advertisements is in video. I barely see posters anymore. It's a GIF, even if it is anything else. It's a 5-second GIF in Instagram, right? So videos was definitely the next best thing. And we wanted to get into that. And all our models, as I said, was robust enough to work for CCTV footages. So it obviously worked easily on normal videos. So we shifted our focus to content extraction, and content extraction, if you want a little more backside of that, is basically what we did is we looked at a video end to end, frame to frame, and we contextually started giving metadata. When I say contextually, that's the keyword here, because you could go frame to frame and say person, 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 but that's not good enough. That's every other company, right? So what we started doing is tracking this person. It's contextual, it's temporal, and it's time bound. So for example, if I put a Mission Impossible movie inside and I searched for a query wherein I say, a person with black shirt running down a skyscraper, I would get exactly to that scene of Burj Khalifa. So it became a thing wherein our AI algorithm became another person and then saw the entire video and looked at the entire video with the metadata that a person would record in his mind. So we became like a proxy for a person. And when this happened, that's when we were like, holy shit, this is having super potential. And then we went for funding, right? And I'll come to this later, I think later in the webinar, but funding, when and how to do funding is a very, very big topic. And we decided to get funding here. Till now, we were bootstrapped. None of us were taking salary. We took 0 rupees home or dollars. And this was 2 years. And it was 2 years of grinding 20 hours a day, 18 hours a day, along with college, right? So it was a tough thing to do, but then it was the right thing to do. And now we went for funding because now we had a product. We had a product which the investors would like. We had a product that had virality. We had a product that had a unique selling point, and it was, one of the kind at that time in 2018 end at least. So now I've seen, Microsoft also came up with a similar product, but by that time now we have already evolved into something. And recently we have again slightly pivoted our product because of this COVID situation. So as any other startup, we also took a big hit with COVID, right? So because work from home, and then suddenly nobody wants to buy luxury products. And our product came into a layout where it is more of enhancing and productivity kind of a product than a need. So when your product is not essential, it becomes bad. In this time of crisis, in time of recession, essential products only work. But 99% of the products are not essential, right? And we're not going to start making face masks. So that's a different thing. So now we have shifted to something called MarsView Notes. So if you check out our website, you can also log in and use it. It's free for all for the next 3 months. So what we do in Mastery Notes is essentially Zoom recordings like these are recorded, and you don't want to keep seeing it again. Instead, you want to make notes out of it. You take this Zoom recording, put it onto our platform. We make notes for you. We make contextual notes for you. We detect the topics. We detect the screenshots. We detect the people in the video. We do the face recognition. We do emotion recognition, and you get an entire analysis of the meeting end to end without seeing the meeting. So if you missed out this webinar, you could see our notes and understand everything I just spoke.
That's
So
actually
that's the
amazing.
evolution of the company. I don't know if I missed out anything. You can probably.
Yeah, actually didn't. But this arises to a very serious question.
Uh-huh.
4 guys, one of whom is experienced, but the other 3 of you weren't experienced.
Yeah.
What was your family's reaction when you told you want to start a company and not set for placement? All of us here, most of us are like engineering students. Some of my friends who are not engineers, even they know that the ultimate objective is to get a job.
Yeah.
Like everyone desires to start a company of their own, but that doesn't happen that easily, right? So what was the family reaction? How did things change that time?
One good thing that we did is we started in second year, right? Family didn't give a shit. So they're like, 2 more years till you get a job. I don't care, do what you want. If you're working hard, good for you. So that was one advantage because 2 years they did not ask me anything. But when they started getting concerned is when I didn't even get into one placement. I said, you know what, I'm not signing up. I'm not signing up. No matter what, I'm not signing up because I had a different mentality. It's this my personal thing. It may not be the same for other co-founders. In fact, Akshay had a job. He quit the job and came. But then I had a personal thing that you know what, if I get into by the way, I was topping my class. I was getting a 10 GPA at that semester at least, and it gave me even more of a dilemma to if go to job or not. But then what I thought, I introspected this, and this might have been too cocky on my side, but I thought I'll do it. You know what? I'll do it. I know I can make it. That kind of a cockiness I had at that point in time, I don't have that now.
The
Fortunately,
rebellious attitude, you mean, like,
yeah, I really thought I could do it. So and I could still go to a job and then still do it, right? But what I thought is, I know myself, and if I get into a job, I would get into a really good job for sure. And I get like a really good package, 25, 30 lakh package. And now how do I come back to zero? Like I have a lifestyle of a 30 lakh package. Now, how do I suddenly say, you know what, screw that. I'm going back to zero and I'm working thrice or 4 times as hard. Right. So the math didn't add up for me. And I thought, you know what, money is not the issue here. My parents are quite okay. We're a middle class family, and then I have food to eat. I have shelter on top of my head. I think that's good enough. Let's do this. So I told this to my mom. So my mom is like, hey, at least sit for placements. See your potential. See if you can get through. I'm like, you know what? That's not the point here. I'm already doing something. It's been 1 year since I'm doing this. Why do you have a problem? You see my dedication in it. I'm putting 20 hours a day. What else do you want? She leveled with me. I think that's about it. Because they showed a lot of trust in me at that point, which was important. Because if they demotivated me at that point, it was game over. Because how do you know when you're 21-year-old, how do you know what's right or wrong? Right? So
also this one more question that comes up is there's just 2 options, right? One is that you actually go sit for a company and get a job, or the plan to do higher studies. Considering your background that you were really good and you had a startup, you interned at IISc, did you never get a thought that let's apply for Stanford, let's apply for
of
UCLA?
course, I applied for CMU and I got in. So I did do that. So I applied for CMU and they took my interview and I got it. And this was coincidentally the same week I started Visio. So Sunday there was an interview, and Tuesday we started the company. It was something like that, right? So and Wednesday I got my acceptance mail. So
And for the reference, guys, CMU is one of the top 5 universities in the world in the field of computer science. So getting into CMU is not like the easiest of things. Like in terms of computer science, they have much better educators than even Stanford. So yeah, you
CMU is
guys
in
should
fact known to be the #1 college for AI or ML.
definitely,
It's
no doubt.
topping MIT as well. So
Yeah.
I was interviewed for a project for autonomous navigation, and that was my 4th year project as well. So my 4th year project was a car that drove itself around the campus, right? So yeah, I had done that project, and I could easily relate to it. and I of course I wanted to do MS in AI. Problem was I had already committed. So I once I commit into something, I really do not budge. So that's one good and bad quality about me because I'm super persistent. Sometimes it's really bad. But in this case, it went good. I still don't know if it's going good because it's still 2 years, 3 years from that interview. But I feel good and I love what I do, so it should be chill. I, I think it's good.
But when you started off, you told you started off in the second year. So did you have like mentors who were guiding you, irrespective? Not talking about those IIC teachers. I'm talking about someone who was in the business side and helping you out. Because nowadays, even if you consider PS University, PES has a director for entrepreneurship, so he can guide you. But back then, there was no one.
Back then, there was no Mr. Satya for me. So, yeah. So what we did not have mentorship. So I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing because, as I said, all my cockiness went into belief that I'll actually do it. If I had a mentor, probably he would have leveled me down. I don't know. So I don't really regret not having a mentor, but I had a mentor later on. So Murli, our fourth co-founder, he's kind of like my mentor. He gives me a crash course of MBA every single second I talk to him. So I don't really. It's okay. It happens. I don't think every entrepreneur in this world has a mentor.
Yeah, so basically, it's not the main necessity. You would say, like you can believe in yourself and go about things.
Yeah, internet could be the best mentor ever sometimes.
But what would you consider yourself as, the business guy, the techie, or are you behind the R&D side of your company?
Okay, that's a good question. So also a question asked by all my friends because they know Rahul codes way more than me. So the thing is, I'm a techie. I would say I'm a product and a techie guy. Right. So my expertise comes. My official title is a CTO. So and the CTO's job is to do this. So understanding the need, understanding the technology, and combining that. Right. So that's what I try to do my best. But then my role in this company changes every day. Dude. Like I become a CPO one day. I become a head of technology one day. I become a R&D. I'm doing everything. I'm doing plumbing as well sometimes. So it's.
Can you tell more about your team? What is the team strength right now? Where do the people come from?
Oh, this is good. So this has a very good story to it because we started off with 4 people and then 2 people as a consultant. We paid them like a freelance kind of money. All our revenue went to them, but in turn they helped us out in UI UX and full stack and all that because our expertise was in DL. We didn't have full stack knowledge. So the team is quite handpicked by me and Rahul and Akshay. So we have interviewed, I think, on an average 600 to 700 people by now in under 2 years, 3 years. And we have a team of 14 people. And these 14 people, you would assume in 600 to 700, if I chose 14, all of these 14 are from IITs. No. So all of these are literally from different parts of India. And I would say my philosophy of hiring is different, right? Like I'm going with the Elon Musk philosophy. I do not care about your CGPA. I've till date never asked the CGPA in an interview. Might have asked for curiosity's sake, but in fact, all our employees are like 6 to 7 CGPA, right? Except me. Problem is CGPA does not actually matter to me because trainability is what I look for the most. So if you can understand the company's needs and if you can take a call at 2 a.m. in the morning and say, Sahil, I'm up for it, that's basically what I want because we work like donkeys. You have no idea. Like the amount of work we do, it's when you are in high standard of an IITian, you will not get this. You'll be like, hey, pay me 40 lakhs for this. That's what they'll ask. So that's not the point here. The point here is to start a company together, and these people will be compensated very fairly by me, for sure. Okay.
One thing which like every student has, like the question, I don't have the right team. We spoke about it earlier as well. That so many people come up to me, they're like, I have a good idea, I have a brilliant idea, but the team is missing out. You probably found the right set of people in the start.
It was very hard.
But what about those who actually don't? How can they actually try to find people? How do they know this person's the right one?
this is like a marriage, man. Like, how do you know it's the right one to marry also, right? So this is literally like that, except here you have way more things at stake than marriage.
Yeah.
I would say this is a most complicated relationship you'd be in, being an entrepreneur, is finding the right co-founder. So Rahul, I knew him from like 10th standard, as I said. So it was chill. Uh, Thing is, yeah, team makes the company for sure, and you have to be ruthless in hiring and firing them when it's required and when it's not required. That's one thing that comes with the job, which is not very pretty. So if you do not find the right fit, you gotta let them go. So this was a brute force approach. There was nothing we could do. We had to go hire people, and then you're like, no, what? It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. Then we find this one guy who's super dedicated, but he has very shaky knowledge. Then we train him, and this guy leaves for Samsung because we trained him. So there's a lot of things like this that happens, right? So um, it's fine. It's part of the journey, and right team is over time. But right co-founders is something you need to find right away. Unless you're starting a company by yourself, like a sole proprietorship. If you have co-founders, you better believe them like your brothers or sisters, right? So they have to think the way you think, work as hard as you, because you can't be working 20 hours and that guy can't be working 2 hours, and you'll not be okay with it. I'm sure he has to work as hard. He has to be as invested as you. He has to have skin in the game as much as you. That's why I'm saying it's like a marriage, and you have to make it work. And if it's not working, you in marriage you can take divorce. Here you're losing a part of your company.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, it's actually more than a marriage, because in marriage there are two people involved. Here you can have three, four, and number of people, the number of
Exactly.
co-founders and the whole team, and the
No
business
point.
can die because of it. To be honest. Yeah. So, like, what was there's something called the go-to-market strategy. You made the product. You are an engineering student. Developing the product wouldn't be the most difficult thing for you. But
Yeah.
how did you find that? How do I go into the market? How do I find the clients? How do I sell the product? Plus, the biggest challenge is, like you told, that you were in India, started a company in a college,
Mhm.
and you got clients from all the way Canada.
Yeah.
So how did that thing go about? And I'm pretty sure that video conferencing and everything has become popular now.
Yeah.
Back then, it was just Skype, like 2-3 years back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was still there, but it was not famous.
Okay.
But yeah, back then the go-to-market strategy was hustle. So there was no strategy, I would say. So we literally went every day to different people and asked their problems. So the best way to get a go-to-market strategy, I would say, is don't do work, communicate. Don't build a product, communicate. Talk to these people. Talk to the people who you're selling to. So if you think backwards, that is the customer first approach of thinking, it's the easiest way to figure out a GTM, right? So you can talk to these people, say, hey, I have this idea, but what in this idea should I change that it can fit your need? And you talk to 10 other people of his persona. Then you talk to 100 other people of his persona. Take the average and the least common denominator and then change that in your product. That's the easiest way to get a product into a shape for a GTM. This is what happened back then. But as and when we matured, our thinking matured, and that's just the organic process. Now we don't do 100 tries, we do 10 tries, but still there is 10 tries. We'll never get the product.
This also arises, right? Like, people have this issue that they don't share their ideas.
Mm.
And some people even tell me that, can you sign an NDA before I tell you your idea? Because they don't want me to replicate that idea later on.
I would associate that with insecurity. If
Yeah.
you are insecure about your idea is not good enough. It's as simple as that. I was one of them, to be quite honest. Okay, so every time I'm like, hey, shall we tell the entire thing? Because no, dude. Like, if your idea is good enough, you think Cisco's or Elon Musk, does he even shy away from telling something before it even happens? He'll tell, hey, I'm building a rocket that's going to Mars, and he's not even started it properly. He's already told in 2022 there'll be people in Mars. There's no test there. So if you have the balls to tell it, sorry for my language, if you have the balls to think it and tell it and do it fast, of course, uh, do it. Like, people is still, you think, okay, let me just do the math here. There's 7 billion people in this world. Each of us have at least on an average 100 ideas per day. That's 700 billion ideas per day. So if you think your idea is unique, you are stupid as hell. So
Also,
there
I
are.
have a different take on this thing.
Uh-huh.
That let's say you have your idea, you share it with someone else. You know what are the pros and cons of that idea. If you're
Yeah.
telling to someone, you're telling them the idea, not telling them the pros and
Of
cons.
course.
Like
You're more invested in that idea for sure.
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, there can only be one Mark Zuckerberg who can make $1 billion business out of it, but it's not always happening.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I don't think you need to be worried about ideas being stolen. As long as you're constantly innovating, your ideas are always better than anything else. You have to be confident enough and act fast. Acting fast is the most important thing.
Why do you like probably the emphasis you're putting on acting fast? Is there a story behind it? Like, did you feel that the competition threat or something has,
Oh, of
or
course.
you have a benefit because you started early?
Not starting early. In fact, why I'm telling act fast is because, like how I do my market survey, other companies are also doing that. So if I know about my competitors, they know about me as well. And they're following my Instagram, they're stalking me head to tail, they're following my LinkedIn, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And they're probably trying to decode everything I'm doing. So because I'm doing that same thing with them, right? And if I'm thinking that I'm the only one doing this, I'm stupid again. So why I'm telling act fast is because they're catching up for sure, or you're catching up with them for sure. So competitors will always be there. There's two ways to see this, right? So if there's a story behind this, I think one of my mentor told this. There's an island where everybody wears nice shoes, okay? And there's this entrepreneur who puts two people there and says, you know what, do a market survey of this, come this island and tell me how good my shoes will do. So this one dude goes and comes back and says, hey, there's no market here because everyone's already wearing shoes. There's other dude who goes and says, there's heavy market here because everyone wants a shoe. So there's two ways of looking at everything, and ideas are same. Ideas are time a dozen. So execution is the key.
It's like the half glass empty and the half glass full.
Yeah.
Being a pessimist or an optimist.
Yeah.
So you told that you got investors, right? When did you actually get those investors on board? Like, was it last year or was it during your college years? Or how did it?
No, not during our college years. So we bootstrapped for around 2 years. So when I say bootstrap, every revenue that came along went back into getting more employees and getting more projects done. So we bootstrapped, and then after that, I think 2018 mid is when we got our first funding, and this was just a seed funding. So this why we even did this is because we wanted to scale to US. So otherwise we wouldn't have done that as well. So scaling to US it's not an easy task. It's not as easy as just going and logging in. So we have to have people there. We have to have customer success team there. We have to have sales team there, because that's where the whole market is. So that's why we went for funding, because we also wanted to hire massively. So usually angel funds are the only funds that let you hire people. Like when you go to Series A, Series B, if you tell them, hey, give me this much money so I can scale up my team, they'll say screw you. Like because they're not paying for your team, they're not paying for your productivity or anything. They pay for your growth.
Yeah,
you should already have a product, and they will pay to scale that marketing effort. So they will never pay for.
Was there any hesitance from the investors, considering that you guys are really young? And did you go on to like multiple iterations and still not succeed, and probably the third or the fourth time you got
hell yeah. So I've sat at least in a minimum, if not at least 150 to 160 pitches of investors before we got a funding, right? So age definitely is a problem up to some extent, but that goes away real quick. As soon as we show our product, they're like, you know what, I don't care about your age, because the product has to be good. You have to talk via your product with these people. So if you go and try to sell yourself, it's not going to work because you're young. And that, at least that's what happened with me. I wouldn't say that's the only blueprint, but there are other 18-year-old who's making $1 billion as well. So I don't know.
But that's actually very true about the investor fact, whatever you told. I really feel that that's the same thing. Like, people, the age bar thing goes away completely. But what's important is how much of take does the investor have today in your decisions?
I would say nothing. So
is it They don't have, you don't allow them to take a take?
No,
Or
no. Of course. See, if I wouldn't say they don't have a take. Everybody in my company, from the lowest grade employee to the highest grade to the board members, have the same amount of take in my company, because we have a symbiotic relationship with each other, because that's how it works. If a product has to work, if this guy comes and tells, hey, this is not working, I don't think this will work, I will take his idea into consideration. There's some sort of precedence they come with, right? They won't randomly change up things. So if you understand the logic behind it, it's fine. So we take, but do they have a majority of say? No.
I was telling that, right now when you're no more a small company,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the US and stuff, do you see employees when you get them on board have hesitating? Because see, there are two types of things. When you are a small stage company, you found students who could work for you. But when you grow up to that MSME layer, a company which is just starting off in its nascent stage, but is still having their products done, do you feel that the employees whom you are going to hire, they have some reluctance that, why should I work for a small company? And probably, as you told, they learn from you and then join someone else.
So yeah, well, that is always there. As I said, it's part and parcel of the journey. People will come and go, but if you have a good work environment and good work ethic, sometimes it works. Sometimes it works for sure. So there's a lot of people who are loyal to us, which is what we respect the most. And then there are a lot of people who are opportunistic, and that's just human tendency, right? Even so am I. In so many levels, I'm also opportunistic, and so are you. So I wouldn't hold it against them for them to think about themselves. That's fine. But as long as they're not screwing us over royally, or intentionally screwing something up, I have no problem. There's thousands of people here we can hire, so it's okay.
So this is the one final question from my side.
Huh?
How do you feel that your company is going to sustain with the whole COVID situation, the global recession, and all of the things that are going to come up in the, let's say the next 18 months? Those things are coming up, right? And also that you told that Microsoft is coming up with the product similar to you. How do you plan to challenge all of these? How do you plan to solve these things?
So that was back in 2018. So Microsoft coming up with something similar was back in 2018, but then we didn't really worry about that as much, because we just felt like that was in fact, a badge for us, because if Microsoft, such a big company, is thinking like we are thinking, I'm happy. I'm actually more happy than worried, because we are not in the same league as Microsoft, of course, but at the same time, Microsoft does not have the flexibility to do what we do. They don't have the domain expertise of one niche like we do. So I wouldn't worry about competition of MNCs as much. But how we are going to handle the COVID situation? So we have a plan for that. So we had, the day we had lockdown, we had a board meeting, and we plotted out the next 1.5 years, right? So that we had to do that, and we pivoted our product. So we are very flexible that way. I'm very proud to tell that MarsView is so flexible in thinking that today we'll have a product, tomorrow we'll have a second product. Like that is our USP. We think very fast, we act super fast, and we did that. So as I said, we have something called the MarsView Notes, which is based out of call recordings. So all we had to do is shift from enterprise videos to call recordings. Every enterprise has call recordings as well. So you think about it, every company right now will be having sales calls via Zoom, and they have to catalog this, right? So that's our product really shines well there, because making notes, giving analytics, and we give deep analytics. It's not just simple. What is the transcript kind of analytics? We give deep level analytics wherein we understand what you're saying, the emotions, everything. So we have a good plan for the next 1 year. Let's see how it goes. It's definitely a task for sure. From the past 1 week, I barely slept 4 hours. You can see that in my face.
So
Yeah.
right I'll open for questions for others to ask you. You guys can use the chat and you can ask questions, or you can unmute yourself and ask those questions, whatever you have. I see Dhruv Shetty commenting here that it's not just about the idea, it's also your value addition to the idea. Like everyone can come up with an idea, but what you put behind the idea is what makes the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you guys feel? How far, how much are you inclined to entrepreneurship, and what are your questions regarding these?
Well, I'm Chetan here. I have a question for you.
Hey Chetan.
Yeah, nice to meet you. It was nice hearing about your journey and stuff. It gives me a lot of inspiration actually because like many of the attendees here, even I aspire to become an entrepreneur. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, does the success of an idea depends on the scale of the vision or the man behind it?
Wow, good question. Scale of the idea or the man behind it. A little
Yeah.
bit of
Let me just tell you my idea.
yeah.
This may sound a little bit out of the fiction books. I actually plan to start my own aerospace company. Okay,
Okay.
but the thing is, yeah, I realize it's not a small industry,
Mhm.
and it requires a lot of what do you say, funding, manpower, and resources. Do you think that so our idea should be pursued without limitations, or what do you think about that? Like
Um,
I said, the scale of the vision.
there is no limitations. So because I've seen some exemplary entrepreneurs like yourself who pitch an idea which is 10 years from now. Like it can be executed only 10 years from now, and I've seen them getting funded. So most of all, if you've seen Shark Tank, I don't know if you follow that. I've seen a company that sold, got a funding for selling sweet potatoes with
Okay.
emoji face on it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a small or a big idea. If you
Mhm.
have a plan for it, if you have a legitimate plan for it,
Okay.
and if you jot it out, and
Mhm.
if you have a way to make a prototype, I don't know in your case how it works, but if
Well,
you
it's not possible.
it's impossible.
Yeah, because my plan was to make a prototype jet, which is technically not possible.
People have done that. Have YouTubed it, and
Okay,
they've died though. So don't do that.
cool, man. Yeah.
Okay, see, if it's a jet, I wouldn't say obviously make a prototype, but then you can design it for sure. There is computer simulations you can do to prove your point. Make the
Uh-huh.
computer simulation, learn that kind of technology. I know I'm sure it's literally rocket science. So learn that technology and then get it to the right people. I know a lot of people in aerospace. Contact me, I'll get you in contact.
Cool, man. I'll how do I contact you? Like when I
LinkedIn,
pitch in my
LinkedIn
idea.
should be the best way.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I have one question regarding the technical aspect of things. Where do you think that the robotic space is headed in the future in like with the advent of things like computer vision, which your company is really into, and do you also plan to like step into the robotics market?
I would say never say never for myself at least. I'm never said no to anything uh, because I don't know the future. So will we go into robotics? I don't see a product roadmap that goes into robotics, but I'll again never say never. We have pivoted enough times for me to never say never. But where the robotics as an industry is going is healthcare. Dude. Like I feel like robotics and AI for the next 4 to 5 years, or at least for the next decade, is in healthcare. That does not mean do everything for healthcare because there are people working as well. But because of this COVID situation, the things that are going to happen is automation and as well as accessibility of these apps or healthcare related products to the most layman. So if you can make a software that can take a photo and detect if you have some sort of disease, those are going to start getting more recognition now because of the COVID situation. I feel like AI is also going to slightly head into a technology based out of healthcare for the next 4 or 5 years. But that does not mean every entrepreneur has to think about it in a healthcare way. For example, Marsview itself, we're not thinking about that part. What we're thinking about is, hey, okay, COVID made all of us starting like work from home and stuff. How do we make work from home better? Right? There's always other things that you can solve. It's a niche. I'm telling the majority would be in healthcare according to me, but there are niche, and most of the startup which is successful has owned a niche. So if you own a niche of an industry, that's way more than enough for your startup. So if you're asking me how it's where it's heading, it's probably healthcare, but that doesn't mean everything else is closed.
Sai, Shashwat has a question, and that is like you mentioned, a person can have 100 ideas a day.
Uh-huh.
On what factors do you compare the scalability of the idea? How
Uh,
do you know which idea is the one that is going to click?
okay, so idea has a certain properties which it has to check. off for it to be a good idea, right? So idea should be, there should be a need for that idea. Okay, it's all revolving around the customers. I'll tell you right away, disclaimer, you may not like the answer. It's not about you, it's about the people who are going to use it. So is there a need for that idea? Okay, is this idea going to be a virality, it's going to have a virality effect? If it is, it's probably a good idea, like TikTok. And is there a unique selling point? So is everybody in this world who is your competitor doing the same exact thing, or do you have something slightly unique that you feel like has the edge over everything else? But this unique selling point should not be like, hey, I put an extra button. No, it has to help a particular feature. It has to help, at least 10 to 20% extra than what is happening before. So unique selling point is the third one. I would say a measurable outcome is the fourth big thing, because when you have an idea, it's usually cool, I know, but what happened? How do you measure this? When I give you a product pertaining to this idea, how will my customer measure it? If he had X amount of things, now did it become 20X? Did it become 2X? How do you measure the outcome? So if you can measure, if your product gives a measurable outcome, it's probably a good idea also. And the best way of detecting if the idea is good is three simple ways, right? If you get a chance to read this book, It's called The Lean Startup. Another book called 0 to 1. These two books can be your Bible for entrepreneurship, okay? So here he says there's literally three steps, right? So you ideate, you make the MVP, which is the minimum viable product, and then you talk to customers, and then cycle back, right? And this cycle itself is enough for you to make your idea better. So if you have 100 ideas, first of all, filter it via this checklist, which I just said, and then take these couple of ideas which you have, try to build a prototype. 100% building a software prototype is all you need is a laptop. So don't ask for money, please. So build the prototype, talk to these customers, and talk to not just one, talk to 100, and then go back to innovation, and then build another MVP, and again talk to them. So that's the easiest way to filter out. That's what we do. That's what I do. But as I said, as we matured, the thinking and the filtering process became way more better. That's the only thing that happens as time passes.
Utkarsh Gupta has a question that what were the projects other than the ones which led you to have a startup that you worked on in your college years?
Oh, dude, I was a techie, like in that sense. Everywhere I could do a mini project, I did it. And I was into robotics, by the way. Back then, I was into. So we made a prosthetic arm which moved exactly the way your arm moved. There was a camera, and anything I did with my arm, the robotic arm could do that as well. It had 5 degrees of motion. It could do elbow, shoulder, fingers, and wrist rotation. So basically, like a KUKA robot, but a little scaled down version. I don't know if you guys know that. So we did a lot of things. We did a autonomous vehicle, which could move around the campus using just a camera. And we did a lot of, and you guys have Jedi, right? So every time in Jedi, I don't know if the Jedi still exists.
It's actually officially closed now. We don't know.
Okay. So back then we had this thing called Jedi. And every time they gave a project, we just went overboard. Like insane people, we just went overboard. Like they asked for an arm, and we made an automated prosthetic arm. They asked for a what do you call that? About 2-wheel balancing robot, which is like a, what's the name for it? I forget. They asked for that, and we built like a whole system with PID system. So we just kept going overboard, and we kept getting awards for that as well. That was a good testament that, you know what, we are innovative, that we are creative, but never thought I'd start a company because of that. I just thought I'd get a good job because of that. But then it happened.
And now going on to the next one, Sarim has a question. So I'm interested in starting a skill development program which can help solving environmental problems. So how should one decide for something like this? By decide here, I mean to start with the work.
Hey, okay. So skill development program, I'm assuming you mean to say you want to start some online classes. That's the best way to do it, right? Or you'll have some webinars or some virtual. Right now, everything is virtual. You have to keep it virtual. So what are you waiting for? Like literally open up your mobile, start recording, post it on YouTube, make a playlist. That's literally what I did last month. If you guys have ever followed me on Instagram, I just put out a workout like a 10 episode workout series because I fight as well. So I'm a professional fighter. So I took all that skills.
Boxer guys. So like other than being an entrepreneur, there are multiple other things Sahil does. He plays guitar. He's a boxer himself. So there are multiple things he does. I don't know how he really has time to do others, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling this. I can't do one without the other. So if I do not box, I don't have the brain capacity to take the entire day because that's where I let my frustration out, and then I get a fresh start. So it's all, I would say it's all intertwined into one entity called Sahil. So anyways, getting back to the answer. So just start recording, I would say, and then put out the content. The best way of becoming a content creator is persistence. I mean, that's the best way of doing anything in life. But then content creation, because the social media is so huge now, has become slightly harder than what it was, say, 5-6 years ago. So, because you can't just shine in middle of so many other people who are doing the same. So try putting out content. Don't get demotivated because that's in Instagram. You can immediately get demotivated. You can get in YouTube though. It's terrible. Like 1 week you'll get like 2 views. Don't get demotivated. Do that. Start sharing the links. People are going to get annoyed. 1 out of 10 people are going to get annoyed. It's fine. You're doing what you like. So I think it should be checked.
And other one from Sai Mihir, that do you feel having a guy from management background in your team would have been a better start to the company?
No, I don't think that would have been a better start. In fact, there would have been a lot of places where we could have evaded some sort of problems, but that's about it. We are not dumb. Like we know how to read internet and understand stuff too. And now I'm fully doing management. So I don't think you need an MBA degree to do anything. I don't think you need a degree to do anything in the first place. So internet.
Adding on to this, basically, I personally feel is technology is a professional study where you learn about tech, whereas management is a skill.
Yeah.
And to see about it, like, most of the guys today who are running the management side of the world are the guys who are techies. Because when you are actually handling tech, you manage it by default. You don't need to study management, like, exceptionally. Like, you don't need to study
So
management.
that's what I was trying to tell before, right? Like every day is a crash course for MBA for me. Even now, I'm learning everything, something new every day. And that MBA is I think is the journey of life. It's not a degree. If you learn management in 2 years and you think you know management in 2 years, kudos. I don't think that happens though.
Now, Tanisha's asked that has there ever been when your products failed?
Mm-hmm.
My question is directed towards liability.
Of course, our products have. If I'm talking very proudly about one product, make like it's for a fact that there's 10 products behind it which failed, and which we didn't want it to fail. We tried as hard the 10 times, and one of it clicked. So it's not the product that we change; it's the business logic. It's the look and feel. It's the product market fit. It's the customers we go for, the persona we go for. That's the only change you'll probably do. If you have a core in your company, which is for us, it's deep learning and content extraction. Our products change based on the top level. That's it. We just change the UI UX. We change the business logic, and everything here is the same. So did it fail? 100%. If it hasn't failed, I don't know. I don't know any company that didn't fail once. So it failed. Of course, it failed, and we just changed our strategy, changed our marketing, changed our messaging. So if you have been following MarsView or Visio AI from 2 years, every 3 months you see our website, we put something different. So we did fail for sure, and that's definitely a part of it. If you haven't failed, you don't know what not to do next. So you learn a lot of what not to do than what to do when you fail. So I feel like that's really essential.
So, Sahil, being an entrepreneur, if you had to give 5 industries students from like current students should focus on and ideate on these industries, what would be the 5 top industries? Because if you see, not every some industries like the service-oriented industry is getting exhausted. So there are innovations with it, but like not as many. So let's say the top five pick for you, what would that be?
That's a good question. Service, number one, let me disagree with you there because service is never going anywhere. As long as there's people, people want people to work. Okay. So, and they want to outsource. Service is like a toothbrush problem.
I meant a completely different part of service, not the service which you're doing.
Okay. So, top five industries. Number one is obviously software because even now, if you see the statistics, the people who fund companies, 52% of them are software industries. So the biggest funding in this entire world has gone for software, and it will be going for software for the foreseeable future, for sure, 100%. So technology software is number one, I would say. Robotics would be number two. This is again my opinion. I can be totally wrong. Because of COVID situation, I would put healthcare as one of the biggest thing. And social media is number four, I would say, because anything really, like we're not going anywhere. We are becoming more social beings than anything else. Every year there's a new app that comes up and breaks the internet. There's always memes around this. This is not going anywhere. Social media is not going anywhere, except it's going to go for like next you'll start seeing 2-year-old babies using Instagram. That's the only difference I see. So social media, I would say, and I want to really choose a really good industry here. I mean, the fifth industry is I would choose is the essentials for the next 5-10 years. Is essentials would never go out of thing, and I don't know how bad this Corona thing is. So I would say essentials is working on essentials would be the fifth thing.
Definitely, like especially putting more emphasis on like emphasizing on the part of essential. If like Mukesh Ambani and Mark Zuckerberg they're working towards the brilliant idea of making sure the kirana shops, because if you see the essentials, they are the ones who are actually delivering upon it. So they want to make sure that they can reach to all of them, and that's one of the things that is being going to come out after the whole funding thing from Zuckerberg to Mukesh Ambani. So yeah, now Pranjal Parekh has asked the question: can you talk about your time management throughout the day, like how you manage to sleep and what routine do you follow to achieve so much throughout the day? Something like basically typical day in your life.
Uh, I wouldn't suggest this day for you guys, but I'll tell it anyway. I wake up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. No matter how drunk or high I am in the last night, I wake up at 4:30 or 5. That's one thing I made sure is part of my discipline, because if I do not wake up at 4:30 or 5, my day is not done. Like everything after that gets screwed up. So I wake up at 4:35 usually, that, and then I work out for like 2 hours because that's part of my routine. I'm a professional athlete, so I have to do that. And I work on my boxing, I work on my Muay Thai, I work on my Jiu-Jitsu. And in fact, I had to have, like, this month was my month for going to Thailand and representing India for the first time. But whatever. So after that, I think my work starts at around 9 a.m. and it does not end after that today. Till I sleep, I'm working. So I kind of work till sometimes 2 or 1 o'clock in the night. And then I usually do not sleep, I pass out. So it's exhaustion that makes me sleep. So this is why I don't really suggest this, because I sleep 3-4 hours a day, which is very bad. But right now my lifestyle and the needs have to, put myself in. It requires this kind of a dedication.
I have a question here for you. Is it because of your entrepreneurship journey that you got these habits of boxing and playing guitar, or did you have them from the start?
No, guitar, I think I picked up guitar at 8th grade, and I picked up martial arts as a concept in 2nd grade. I started with karate, and I took it all the way to black belt. And when I became serious about martial arts, of course, after entrepreneurship. So I started MMA as a profession after entrepreneurship, and I feel like there is a big connection to it, because two main things you need to have control over is physical and mind, right? So if I had my mind under control because of entrepreneurship. I had my thing. I had like a sorted plan of what I want to do. But my physical body was getting out of hand because, we used to party a lot also, and I did not take care of my body as much. And then I was like, you know what? Let me get some discipline in life, and the best way to get disciplined in life is martial arts, dude. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that one thing, that one discipline, the routine which we follow in martial arts is so extensive. It's not these martial arts they teach in Cult Fit. Okay, that's stupid. So this is some real shit I'm doing. So the thing they teach here is so intense that you learn moral values out of it. I don't know how, but you do. You start like, you know what, if I wake up and I can do this, I can do this. So you start getting that kind of thought process. And once I got that, it was very addictive for me. Like I'm a little bit of I would say, an insane person in terms of I like pain. In terms of I like putting myself in like a big uncomfortable position. Like that's basically why I started the company also, because I went here and I was like, holy shit, what's happening? There's like 10,000 things that's coming on my way. I'm like, you know what? I can get used to this. Same thing happened with MMA. So the first time I got hit in my face, I loved that game after that. So I don't know.
So you do believe that, when you're actually focused on one idea or something, you need something else to de-stress you, so that, when you actually work on the idea, you're more focused.
Yeah, definitely. And it would help if it's a totally different thing. Like, don't try to do something adjacent, try to do something polar opposite.
Yeah. So Dhruv Shetty's actually done some research. He's also a national MMA fighter, soon to represent India in early 2020. Trained and certified in 5 martial arts. That's good research.
Yeah. I think that's there in my LinkedIn bio.
Yeah, he's actually written it. So Murli's asked you'd mentioned that you were doing an IISc internship about DL in the middle of your second year.
Yeah.
You need to have some sort of background in this area for that, right? How do you acquire that, and when did you start? And at the end of first year, where were you in terms of technical knowledge? I guess he's from first year, so that's why he's so curious about this.
Okay. So IISc, I didn't start off with DL projects. I started off with Android projects. I'm from electrical background, but I started with an Android app. While doing this, you know what, I showed some heart, and because I had no idea of Android, and I still got into it, and I made an app, and it worked like a charm. And this professor really liked me because I showed heart and I showed leadership there. And then after my summer internship, I went back to him and I was like, you know what, I have an idea. Can I, do it with you? So I had an idea for, I don't know if this project is common now, but back then it was a really good idea. So I made a glove wherein, you can do sign language and it converts it into English. So using flex sensors, resistors, and gyroscope, we could detect all the things and then convert it into English. I think a couple of MIT students after that made it. So I don't know. So that's how I got into ML. So because that required a lot of filtering and ML. And then DL, I would say my DL knowledge came all thanks to my other co-founder, Rahul. So he started sending me these links of genetic algorithm and all that during my second year. And I was just reading the links. I'm very curious about technology, but I'm not the biggest fan of coding, right? Though I code and because I need to, but my thing is I'm more of a technologist than a coder or a developer. So he kept sending me this, and I kept sending him ideas. And we cumulatively started making projects. And there was other couple of people in my class. So we started like that. So my DL knowledge, I would say, is not because of DES, it's because of internet. Fully.
So, as you told, do you feel that coding, minimal coding is essential for everyone?
Definitely. Holy shit. It's required. You need to have skin in the game. Like, for sure. If you do not know how to do it yourself, people will screw around with you a lot. They will tell. I've literally met freelancers who say, hey, I'll do it in 2 weeks. I'm like, dude, it's a 2-hour job. I know for a fact it's a 2-hour job. I can do it myself. And I did it. So, you need to definitely know what you're doing before you start hiring people who can do it better than you.
So one more thing, on this group, I'm pretty sure right now on the chat, there's so many of them who actually have, this is a societal thing that, computer science is a fad. So we all believe that only computer science guys are supposed to code and only those guys get a job. Those guys are good with this thing. So how would you feel like a person who's from electrical, ECE, or any other branch train themselves mentally to go a long way in life, not just for placements?
Um, See, here again, I would go back to my initial point. Think about your bigger picture, right? Like, if your bigger picture is to just get a job, do all the things that's required to get a job. You want to learn how to code algorithms, learn. If that's your big picture. But I don't know. See, that's the problem with these education institute is because everyone who is in CS gets a better placement. I don't know why companies also do this. Half of my employees who code DL is all from electrical background or diploma background. I don't know. So I don't. It's all about what you do and where your mind is at that determines it. But 99% of the students always go into this peer pressure mode of getting a job and then they start learning. So it's very sad that people think that way because there's so much out there. Like I've seen a bit of world, not too much, a bit of world, and I know you can make money in anything in life. You can make money out of anything in life, not just, you know what, you're going to go into the software engineer position with all this hard work. You know what they're going to make you do in these MNCs? They're going to make you do testing.
Definitely.
They're going to make you test code from people who are higher above than you, which is a very tedious and boring job. Sometimes it can be interesting, it's up to you. But 99% of the time you're paid well, but you're doing something so boring that you don't really want to do it. After 1 year, you're going to realize what you're doing and you're going to quit. And 90% of my friends have changed their jobs, who are so adamant about getting a placement and a job that now they're changing jobs. Why? I don't know. If you're so happy about it, you should be in it, right?
Yeah. Also, like we actually missed the part of Murli's question. That was, where were you in terms of technical knowledge after the first year?
After first year, okay. So my technical knowledge is more in was more in electronics back then, and because I started soldering circuits when I was in fifth grade. So my first electronics project was in fifth grade. So my dad is also a scientist. He's in DRDO. So he started, giving me this DIY kind of soldering. I started doing that. So my fantasy has always been to, be like Iron Man. So quite literally why I took electronics, the stupidest reason I know is because I saw Iron Man. I'm like, you know what, I want to make some, I know that's not possible, but then I wanted to get to a place where I could even think of doing things like that. So that's why I took electronics. I had a chance of taking computer science. I had a good rank, but I took electronics because of that.
Yeah, like let's get back to the questions. So Neha has a question. So in the production industries, there is a need to balance quality and the pricing of raw materials. How do you think industries can reach a balance?
That's a good question. Out of my pay grade, but then let me try and answer it. Balance quality and pricing of, okay, this is the same thing that happens in software as well. So let me put that in my perspective. So there's always not just quality, like for example, if we are making a product and our competitors are doing X things, we try to do 20X things and put it in the same price. And this is always a problem. Even for us right now, it's a problem because we want to give so many features which we have, but quality reduces as and when you increase more and more features. There is a tipping point, right? If you ever read product management, there is something called saturation point after which features do not make sense anymore. It's just wow factors. So what was the question again?
It's just about, you can check it out.
Yeah, quality and pricing of raw materials. How do you, the balance is, yeah. So the balance, at least in software industry, is you have to find that tipping point, that elbow, wherein this features start becoming not valid. Like for example, you can see in Instagram, right? They randomly changed the entire chronology from date to relevance, and everybody lost their mind. This was back in, I think, 2 years ago. When they changed their algorithm, everybody lost their mind. They could have put a button telling sort by date. It's not a hard task. It's literally a SQL or a whatever MongoDB query, which can sort by date. But they didn't, because this is the this is a decision of a product manager, which that's why he's in the hot seat. That's why he's paid the money he's being paid. You have to take a decision where you have to say, you know what, if I increase any more features, my quality is going to decrease, and that will be counterproductive. So if you find the tipping point, it's a hard problem to solve for sure. Even now, even in software, it's a hard problem. I can only imagine in manufacturing how much more harder that is. So
Also, like after the whole coronavirus thing, companies shifting from China to India and other Southeast Asian countries, this problem will be like, answered much more by the people who are in the industry. Like you will
yeah,
hear from them every now and then because it is something that's going to come. So we
yeah.
have a question from Chetan. Do you think AI can be capable for intelligent banking where people can be replaced by self-governed systems?
They're already doing that. So they're already doing that, but they don't tell you. So why I know this is because we worked with the banking system as well. So there are a lot of okay, right now in banking, what they're doing is they're using AI mostly for fraud detection, anomaly detection, and that's the main thing I would say. But will they use to replace humans? I don't think AI will replace humans. First of all, that logic does not make sense to me. They said computers will replace humans. Where did it replace? It just made our work much faster, right? So the same thing they're going to tell AI will replace humans. It's not going to replace humans. It's going to augment our life. It's going to make us do things much faster. But there are always going to be people. If you replace some things with AI, they will have to maintain these things. So they'll still be there, and that's going to be there. I don't.
But I have a
Hmm?
follow-up question to that. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
The thing is, right, AI can also be used for advising services, right? Apart from just focusing on fraud detection and other
Mhm.
capabilities, it can also be used as a personal advisor. Like, yeah. So what I was saying is, AI on a larger scale can be used as a personal banking advisor. You replace humans with AI, and it also serves as a, what do you say, a digital medium for interaction with with larger scale of people. See,
Of course.
you want to connect to smaller and
Yeah, that's exactly where they're using as well. So if you go to any US banks, you will see a chatbot, which is an AI system which caters to this exact need. So because they don't in the inbound traffic, say for example, Bank of America, the inbound traffic is so much that they cannot cater to everybody's need. They cannot make everybody into a qualified lead. So here's where they put AI number one to detect who the qualified lead is. Number two, how do they do this? By putting a chat window in front of them, pushing a lot of conversation and understanding how important they are, how serious they are, and then humans take over. So it's definitely used filtering process right now. I would say slowly it could be doing the end-to-end process as well. But banking is such a sensitive topic that people will not make it end-to-end. It's always going to be governed by a human, I feel, because yeah.
Also the fact that the government doesn't want to let's say, like when we see, like Chetan also spoke to me some days back, and we were talking about blockchain being involved, like cryptocurrencies being involved full-fledged. So
Mhm.
I personally believe that the government doesn't want to decentralize the process, because if you actually think about it, the whole decentralizing process will eliminate the whole corruption thing.
It will. I don't think that will happen anytime soon.
It will, because governments, how, like, it's not only about India, it's not only about the US.
Mm.
Every government, even though they are against corruption, they survive and thrive on it.
Yeah, definitely.
So
100%.
nobody wants to actually, like, unless it's Saudi Arabia or Dubai or someone who really want to make it decentralized because it's monarchy.
Now, there's a lot of places where AI can basically make everything easier, but they don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of politics that goes behind it, for sure.
Yeah. So going back, Daksh's question is, any tips or any kind of guidance regarding entrepreneurship or jobs, especially during this recession and COVID situation, and especially for the students from the batch of 2020? And guys, even I'm from the batch of 2020. All of us are worried. In fact, I'll say that even the batch of 2021 should be worried. Both
Mm.
batches should be equally worried because this virus is not going away anytime soon.
See, recession, I don't think you guys need to be worried about jobs because, first of all, you're from PS, they have a good reputation. Second of all, jobs are not going anywhere. It's just going to change. The type of job will change. Jobs are not going to go anywhere. Everything, the way you may not go to places. You may have to sit in home, but jobs are definitely there. Everybody's hiring. 2008 recession, if you have followed, a lot of people lost their jobs, but that was a different kind of recession. Okay, that was economic meltdown, which happened because of the whole housing loan and all that mortgage shit. So now it's a different scenario. It's not like something has melted down. It's just that there is a hurdle to get out of your house. That's the only thing, right? So that doesn't mean, yeah, like a lot of manufacturing industry will take a slight hit, which it already has. But software industry, I don't think is going to go anywhere. They're just going to work from home. In fact, the statistics says that working from home is being more productive than going to office, literally. So our customers also has said like they're working at least 2.5x more. So I wouldn't say software jobs are going anywhere. Do not worry about it. But what would you do in this time of crisis is, one thing, you're having a lot of free time. As students, isn't that like the best thing you can probably do? Like you go and bombard your brain with a lot of new courses, and not just the courses you want to do the courses you feel like you would want to do, right? So go and do, if you're doing computer science and you're like, you know what, I don't know how this whole MBA thing is, go do a management course online, try it out. So now you have the time and luxury to try out random stuff, try it out. I think this is literally a boon for students right now.
Yeah, probably the last question we'll take, considering that we are reaching the end of the session. Maha's question is, will you be available to answer queries post this session on LinkedIn?
Sure. I mean, I get like at least 30 messages on LinkedIn every day. So by mistake, if I do not reply, please don't feel bad, but I'll be there. Now that you mentioned it, I will look forward to it.
Yeah, guys, I would actually urge you guys to reach out to him on LinkedIn and Instagram, follow his IDs, because I personally been very profited with this whole session. And I think most of you other guys also are. So ending this session, I want you to answer this very simple question. What are, according to you, the 5 essential skills? They can be technical, non-technical, for every student and an early professional. Like, what are the 5 essential skills according to you?
Okay. It's very subjective. I feel the essentials changes, but then, okay, yeah. So I would say number one is persistence. That's something I've been telling to everyone all my life, right? Persistence, because there will be people who say no all the time. There's naysayers all the time. So persistence is something you got to instill. Discipline is number two, because I'm just telling it out of my personal experience. Putting discipline in my life changed my life upside down for the good, right? So discipline and persistence is two. And then I would say respect time. This is something which people do not do. I don't know for what, Jai, but respect your time, and more than that, others' time. If someone says a meeting is at 3, be at 3. Be at 2:45, in fact. Okay. So if you start respecting time, people start respecting you automatically. That's the not technical. Okay, I wouldn't say technically be strong. That's obvious. Okay, if you're going into a technical field, if you're not technically strong, what are you even doing, right? So, and always try to be a little more optimistic than pessimistic. Don't be a real. I mean, I know realist is the most ideal way, but people usually go off to the pessimism when they are in realism. So be a little more optimistic in life. See the glass half full. I have an analogy here. I would say don't see the glass half full. It's a whiskey half full. If you have a whiskey glass, would the whiskey be good if you have the entire glass? No. It'd be good only if you have half of it, right? So the glass comes with half whiskey. So that's how it is. So you have to balance out that bad and good part and always enjoy the good part. So I would say, be a little more optimistic in life. We need positive vibed people around us all the time. So if you are one of them, you will find more of them, and that'll be like a butterfly effect for your life. I did that. I started cutting off people who are toxic. I started getting on with people who are getting onto my vibe, and I'm here now. So my co-founders are one of those people also. And I would say be a self-critique, but then don't self-doubt, right? So what we do, this is very big in entrepreneurship as well, because we start self-doubting on everything we do. Self-doubt is not the word I would use. Be a self-critique. Like try to do something and then look at it from the other side. It's called backward thinking. So start thinking as a customer, start thinking as a user. Then you start changing your strategy. Do not self-doubt. because we have enough knowledge from 20 years of our life to take a decision that we are taking. Don't self-doubt. If it's a logical decision, if it's as long as you're not killing people, it's probably something you're doing it for the right reasons. It should be good. So don't self-doubt, be self-critical. And yeah, last of all, I would say be a little cocky in life. And this is not for like the bad cockiness. Try to be in the good cockiness. What's a good cockiness is, don't think you're the smartest person in the room, but think you could be if you tried, right? So I would say those are the qualities I would go for.
That's perfect. I feel that was the best way to end this webinar. I personally enjoyed it, and I'm pretty sure everyone else did, because I already have messages on my WhatsApp that, the session was good, the session was great. So thank you guys for attending it. Thank you, Sahil, for taking out time from your busy schedule. And guys, if you want to reach out to him, do reach out to him, follow him on the platforms. I'll be sending you the links for his platforms very soon with a survey form, which you can actually tell us that, what would you like us to add on to the next time if we actually have a session. And someone who missed, if you would like your friends to attend this, we are recording this session and we'll send the session to you guys as well. So just get back to me, get in touch with me. So yeah, the chat is already very active. This was a great session. I guess there's a brilliant feedback already.
Thank you, Dave. First of all, you doing this whole thing, that's awesome. Try to get more people like this. It's going to be great. So
yeah, that's the plan.
Initiative you have taken. I don't know if you have taken it, or is this a thing college is pushing? I feel like you have taken this.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So awesome job at that, first of all.
The main motive behind this whole thing is that the student community, making them more active during the whole COVID thing and making things possible.
Yeah.
So we'll be having sessions every Saturday in the coming days as well. You guys can reach out to me, reach out to Sahil if you have anything where we can help you out. Make sure we are there for you. Thank you guys. Thank you for attending this.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.